What's going on with QB1? Why is Carson Steele so dang strong? And how do they move on into week 4 today on Locked On Chiefs?
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, Chiefs Kingdom. It is Carson Steele that happens to be strong. Yes, I know. He and we are brought to you by FanDuel right now. You can get $5 for just that bet will get you starting up to $200 in bonus bets. You can get it all guaranteed at FanDuel.com to get started. We're going to get started in breaking down this Falcons game that confounded some, frustrated others, and certainly gave us a better picture of where we're at in a number of different ways. Chris is going to bring us some specific data. He runs Chiefs Corner, Casey Chiefs Corner. You could get all the data and his write-ups on it by going over there. But we are going to talk about some of that coming up here in the show. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, as well as NFL 33 and RGR Football. Thanks for making us your first listen. Make your next listen another Locked On show. Like and sub and hit the bell here on YouTube. Go to Spotify and Apple Podcasts to get the audio side. And then join us on any of our other outlets. We're really excited. You locos make us excited by listening every day, giving us the feedback, and getting on that text line at 816-357-8781. This is what we got. A UDFA, of all people, leads the rookie class in week 3. We'll talk about him coming up. Where is the pressure? Because it ain't on the field right now. That is a concern that we have to deal with this particular week. But we start with QB1 and a lot of questions, a lot of back and forth. We talked last night live with Matt Derrick. If you missed our postgame, go back and listen to that because it did feel like variations and slipping in and out of gear. And I'm using the car analogy today because I feel like Pat's trying to shove it into 5th gear and scream down the highway, but he's stuck in idle. I do feel like it's not running smoothly, and he's got to let things come along a little more naturally. I feel he's forcing, and I think that's bad for the engine.
I think he's trying to be too perfect too. Go back to the Cincinnati game. I know we're talking about Atlanta, but here's my example. Go back to Cincinnati. His underthrow of Worthy, he tries to put it on him in the wrong spot. He did the exact same thing against Atlanta. If you go back and watch that touchdown, that what should have been a touchdown pass to Worthy, he put it in the wrong spot. If he leads him and puts a little bit of air under it, there's nobody else on the Falcons defense that could get there. And Worthy's able to outrun the DB to get it in the end zone. He had the entire side of the end zone open to him, and he threw it basically right at Worthy's body. And I'm not going to fault. Thankfully, Worthy made a play on it and didn't let it get picked. But I'm not going to fault Worthy for that specifically. You have to lead the receiver a little bit more and put a little bit more air into it. I think that's one of the biggest things is he's trying to be too perfect, and I think that's a big problem. The third down late, it looked like it just dropped in front of Worthy's feet. Andy Reid did come out and say late today that wasn't Worthy's fault. He shifted down because he saw Rashid Rice going in the same zone and was trying to stay out of the same area that Rice was in. So a little bit of a miscommunication. Rice is probably supposed to be, 10 yards deeper on that route, at least 7 or 8 yards deeper on that route, and then it wouldn't have been an issue probably. But it's the small things that are always going to add up. And right now that's what the problem is with this offense.
Yeah, it's the fine details. Again, I feel like they're trying to jump up to a level that they're not quite there for. They got to build through the season. We know that they always take that into account for most years. I do feel like they're doing that in the run game. And it just feels like for all the offseason work, it felt like it jump-started Mahomes' mind into we're already this far down the road, and it's not fundamental. It's not first quarter football. It feels like he's trying to play like it's week 10 or something like that. You know what I mean? And I think part of that, you correct me if I'm wrong, is that they're still passing more on third in general. Third and short is an interesting situation. I know you have stats on it, but that all comes back to me working with Hollywood all offseason and feeling like maybe mentally that, hey, we're farther along than we were last preseason, but now without Hollywood, it's not the same. And it does feel like he's got to throttle it back and get a little bit more basic, a little bit more, like you said, put it where it has to be, not where you want it to be necessarily in a perfect situation. Play the odds and be a little bit more cautious with the ball.
The one thing I will say, and I kind of talked about this a little bit actually on Twitter or on X last night, Hollywood, I think, is a huge loss. So I don't think that we really have an idea of how big of a loss that really was to this team yet. I do think that they had so many different things in this offense. They built so many things in this offense to be built around him and to use him to open up space for other players, including Travis Kelce, including Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy. And to lose him before the season even starts just completely, I think, in some ways, probably put the Chiefs offense into idle. Not just QB1. And so now you're looking at a situation where you're trying to adapt, and then you lose Pacheco last week. And that's another issue. Your running game, we'll talk about Steele here in a second, but your running game is stalled a little bit after you lost Pacheco to an extent. Steele played well, but it's still not the same player. And what you prepared for in the preseason and what you prepared for in training camp and all the offseason is not there. They're going to have to make an adjustment. You asked the question, how many third downs did they pass on 3rd and short? And it was 6 out of 9. And on the season, I believe, from what I can see right now, I think they are 5 for 14 on 3rd and short. And they're almost double that on 3rd and medium.
Wow. Okay. It's not what you expect, and it doesn't go towards the normal reasoning. And I feel like the number of passes in those situations definitely feels like comfort level, not situational awareness. But problems in the run game and short yardage have been there as well, although I think they have an answer for it. We're going to talk about that coming up later in the show. But next, there's got to be pressure. There's been a lot the first couple of weeks. This week, it did not happen. Where do they go from here without having to send a DB every single time you're in 3rd down? That's coming up next. When you're hiring for a small business, you want to find the quality professionals with the right fit for the right role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. It has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team. I'm always looking at LinkedIn. It isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you find professionals you can't find anywhere else. Even those who aren't actively looking or searching for a new job might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get qualified candidates within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. It goes down the easiest way to post your job for free is on linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. This is where it comes down to making the most out of what you have. And I'm not sure that I'm prepared to discuss positively how that pass rush is. What do you got?
I just saw some news that broke as we're recording this. Derwin James is suspended for a game, so he won't be playing against the Chiefs. Sorry, I know we're talking pressure in this game against the Falcons, but that was interesting, and it is timely information. When you start talking about pressure, there's a lot of issues. Chris Jones had no pressure at all against the Falcons. And to be going up against the Falcons line that lost 2 players in game and to get no pressure from your best pass rusher is a big problem. Now, he did have a quarterback hit, but I don't think he's getting credit for that because of the penalty that was called, which was a joke to begin with, but we won't go there. Sure. You look at this and you cannot go into a game against the Chargers and not have pressure. And it's going to be an even bigger deal if Herbert plays, but Herbert may not play. There's a lot of questions there. And the Chargers are likely without their starting 2 tackles. But you cannot go into that game and not get pressure on the quarterback. And 21 pressures or more, I think, in the first 2 games, 13 pressures total in last night's game against the Falcons. Now, part of that is they held the Falcons to not running that many plays. So there is part of that that's there, but still not enough pressure.
That's why you got to look at pressure rates. And that's what it comes down to, the percentage of the opportunities you have, right? And what's even more concerning is this was against a line was featuring multiple backups. That's not something that you generally have to think that the Chiefs aren't going to get pressure, right? Leading pressure producer last night, Drew Tranquil of all people. George Karlaftis, only 2. Mike Dana. Tershawn Wharton was only credited with 2 pressures, but he was in a lot of plays and he beat a lot of blocks. So that's not necessarily an indication of pressure, but you do have to keep that in mind. But bottom line is, this is a team that should be getting better in this situation, in this category of producing pressure as the season goes on. I do feel like Chris Jones got a little bit frustrated. I do feel like the Atlanta offensive line was very physical with them. They had multiple hands of the face penalties. You have to think that they can sustain that and be able to still produce, and they weren't able to do that last night. Hopefully that's a lesson learned, but where do you think that comes from?
I'm not sure where it comes from, but I think you go back and watch the week before when the Falcons played, and Chris Lindstrom signed a huge contract in the offseason to be one of their star players on the offensive line, and he was just absolutely getting beat the week before and then didn't have an issue with Chris Jones this week. It doesn't make sense to me that Chris Jones goes, 7 pressures a game basically the first 2 weeks and then nothing against an offensive line that, as you said, had 2 players that were out. Starting in the second quarter, they lost 2 of their offensive linemen. It doesn't make any sense how they were not able to get him involved in the pressure game. And yeah, Drew Tranquil did fantastic. His blitzes were great, but you cannot rely on blitzes to get home every single time that you need to get pressure on a quarterback. And the bigger issue in this for me isn't necessarily that they just didn't get pressure, although that was big. It's that they didn't get pressure on somebody that has no ability really to move in the pocket. Kirk Cousins isn't mobile at all. And you're not able to get pressure on somebody where you're basically, you got to get to one spot, 5 to 7 yards behind the line of scrimmage. It's not like he's going to be moving around.
That's very true. And unfortunately, it comes to individual matchups, and it just felt like nobody was able to really get the edge on their blocker, the guy that was attacking them the most. And that's not something that they can rely on because, as you said, good blitz package. A couple of DBs came out on blitzes as well. But Spags, that has to be the elevation, right? That has to be hey, we're going to take it up a notch and send that kind of pressure. It can't be that we have to send second level and third level players in order to get pressure. This early in the season, that's a bad sign because you have nowhere to go if you're already pulling out those kind of plays. So they have got to get that locked up. I know that we talked about a couple of weeks ago about possibilities of trying to acquire someone else. Do you think that's still a must? I know FAU's big play where he did produce a sack and a strip that was unblocked. There was a schemed attack, but he did come off the ball pretty well. Does that give you like a let's give him more and see if he can grow, or where are you at with that?
No, I think that this is one of the biggest places that they probably need to make an addition. And, I talked about this on X as well. One of the things that you have to watch for in the next couple of weeks is if they make a restructure to Jawan Taylor, they're going to make a move of some sort. That's their easiest way to free up money. I'm not going to say that they're going to do it, but they could free up a lot of cap space to do that. And when you're talking about a pass rusher, unless you're going to be getting a rookie, you're probably going to be talking about somebody that's going to cost a lot of money. Hassan Reddick is still out there. I don't know if that's really even an option, but they have to figure something out at pass rush. And everybody, I love Charles Omenihu, and I hope I'm wrong on this, but expecting him to come back and have a huge impact in the second half of the season because he's able to come back and play in November, I think is asking way too much of somebody coming off an ACL that depends on his explosion.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It will help, but it can't be something that you plan for. That's not the saving the season point here. You have to get better play. Out of in particular, Chris Jones and George Karlaftis, the 2 premier pass rushers on this roster, like you said, have been producing pressure but hadn't been finishing. Now, last night, they weren't even able to produce pressure. You got to go back to the drawing board, and maybe it was the week you're playing an offensive line that was minus a day of rest when they played you. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. They are going to see what I think is arguably a better offensive line overall in this coming week. And so they have to step up their preparation so that they are ready to go. Now, I don't think there's anything about traveling east for the first away game in the season, but a lot of people do. Do you buy into that?
I don't buy into it. I think that this is just something where they didn't get the pressure that you were expecting them to. And I will say this: Tershawn Wharton has been a man possessed in some instances this season, and it's been fantastic to see. I expect that he's going to continue to get more pressure. He only had 2 against the Falcons, which I thought was really surprising. He's the one that forced the interception throw. That was on, that's Wharton causing that play. But you have to get more from your other guys. And Pennell got credited for a sack because he took Cousins down as Cousins was trying to run at the line of scrimmage. Congratulations to him, but that's not going to be enough. You have to get more internal. I would prefer internal pressure versus edge pressure, if I'm being quite honest, because internal pressure is harder to escape and it drives quarterbacks a little bit crazier, in my opinion, because you're getting right in their face. So I would prefer if they could find another pass rushing defensive tackle if they're going to make a move. I don't see them making a move for a defensive tackle. I think that they're probably going to be stuck with the guys they have, which is okay. And they've been doing very good against the run, which is not what I expected this season, especially when you start looking at who they played, Derrick Henry and now Bijan Robinson, and having those 2 games. But they have a huge test coming up against the Chargers, who are really a running team right now. Could be changed if Herbert doesn't play, obviously, but pass rush wise, they just don't have it. And until they figure that out, until they can get it figured out, they're going to struggle, and they're going to put their corners at risk, because if you don't get pass rush pressure, they're going to get more. The QBs are going to get more time to throw. It may not matter this week, but you absolutely need to have it for the week going up against New Orleans. Spags has Derek Carr's number to an extent, but you got to figure out your pressure and where you're going to produce it. Mike Dana is a great run stuffer, but he's not getting the pressure you need at that position, and there's just isn't an answer. You're hoping that FAU would be that guy, but you're right. It was an unblocked pressure at that, but it's an unblocked sack and unblocked strip. Not trying to take anything away from him, but he's got to do it when he's being blocked. I mean, that's the reality.
Yeah.
You can't just expect that to happen
right?
on a regular basis.
The one thing that I'll say, and I know, folks, we're going to get to our next topic because it is important. I'm holding out hope that something that they're having trouble transitioning Cam Thomas into this defense for some reason. He has been a guy that has produced in this league. He did play the preseason and was healthy and looked good. So I'm at a loss as to why he's not playing yet. So I do think he might provide a little bit of lift if it's just about the terminology and understanding his responsibilities. And as he learns the playbook, maybe he'll be able to transition and bring some of the spark, because I think physically he is a Spags kind of guy that can do what they ask him to do. So we'll see what happens.
And I would think he would take Harry's part. Sorry, that's all I was going to say. I think he'll switch out with Harry and probably get more pressure.
Knock on wood, you'd hope so. Now, another guy that is new to this team is making the biggest splash, and I think we have to talk about why Carson Steele is strong and why I keep confusing those 2 words, because he's going to be in this lineup. He deserves to be in this lineup. But what does that do for the offense coming up next? NFL fans, it's time. You can start the season with a big return to FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. When you get a hunch, right in the middle of the game even, you can check the latest stats, go over there, view the live play-by-play, and make so much more that you can get on the same page and place your bets right then and there. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets right now, guaranteed, when you place your first $5 bet over at FanDuel. The Chiefs right now are 7-point favorites against those Chargers, so get into the action. That's at FanDuel.com. Go check it out today. Also check on Locked On NFL. The new version is twice a day with our buddies Tyler and Tony. They're going to get you settled and get you all the information that you want in double doses. Enjoy it at NFL Locked On NFL, that is. NFL all the time, everywhere. I love that show, and I do miss doing some of the league-wide stuff. But nobody has a better storyline right now in this league than I feel we do, because we get to talk about a long-haired, blonde, bam-bam-looking guy. I do like that from the broadcast. I am going to steal that, and I'm going to use as many nicknames for Carson Steele as I possibly can, because one, I get going about him. I will confuse him with Carson Strong, a quarterback from a few years ago. So don't mind that. It's all still going down the same path. But it felt to me like he surprised a lot of people last night in that he was able to be more the bell cow running back, not just a fullback that has to carry the ball at times. Now, I know it didn't look like you wanted to look with the acceleration of Isaiah Pacheco and the ability to make some people miss. He's very much more a linear runner. But the ability to make contact and drive his legs and continue forward, I think is something that's been missing in this offense since Andy Reid came here. And I'm really excited to see that because they're going to need to rely on him at least until they feel like they can get more run share to Pirine or bring up Hunt.
72 yards on the ground last night for him on 17 carries, 4.2 yards a carry. But the big thing that stands out to me, 52 yards after contact. Highest total by a Chief this season, and that beat Pacheco's 46 last week against the Bengals, and Pacheco had 2 more carries. So Carson Steele is, he was getting hit earlier, but he was making the pile move, and 4.2, you will take that from just about any running back, honestly. But to get it from a rookie running back in his first start, I think is great news for Kansas City. We'll see how they change things up and how their running game changes. Nothing to take away from Carson Steele. But I thought Pirine looked good in the running game as well last night when he went in there and ran a little bit. So I think that was something that you need to see. And I think that they're going to continue to have to sprinkle in Pirine and maybe Kareem Hunt when he comes up. But Carson Steele should be the guy going forward until Pacheco comes back. And, we talked, 6-8 weeks. That puts him back right before the Buffalo game. If Steele can do what he did last night on a regular basis for the rest of the, until Pacheco comes back, you ease Pacheco back. You don't get him in there for 20 touches the first game. You get him in there for maybe 10 to 15 at most. And maybe it's 10 to 15 snaps, not even 10 to 15 touches. You ease him back into it because the important thing is having both those guys healthy as the year gets into the playoffs and they're, playing into January and February.
Yeah. I think it also is telling that there's always bumps in the road for rookies. He wouldn't be in this position, honestly, if the passing game was flourishing because Hollywood was here. They were chucking it a lot more. Probably would have dumbed it down. Maybe Isaiah doesn't get hurt at that point. So he's making the most of it. Who's not making the most of it? Obviously, we're seeing some bumps on the other offensive players, and Kingsley Suamataia not getting to play very much, only in a couple of situations. We'll see when and if that changes. Xavier Worthy not getting there. Jaden Hicks still didn't get many snaps last night. This right now, for going into week 4, Carson Steele is the rookie class in terms of contributions on the field, at least what we can expect going against the Chargers.
Yeah, and that's kind of surprising. I was just looking to see at snap counts. I don't think it doesn't look like Hicks got a single snap last night on defense.
Not on defense. I lied. 3.
He got 3 on defense.
Okay. Yeah, 1 in
Well,
coverage. Did play teams though, and I think he contributed there. So he is making some kind of incremental improvement. So I think that works.
Yeah. I guess I was looking at box score stats, and he didn't have any box scores. So he isn't on there as having any snaps, so that's why I was missing it. But 3 snaps for a guy that was basically tearing it up in the preseason, and to not have him playing right now when you're struggling at different positions. And I don't understand. I understood Kyle Pitts was going to be a problem, even though Atlanta really doesn't use their tight end like they should. But to go into that game and not try to change something else. And to me, this is something that they need to try to figure out. If they can put Jaden Hicks in there just to cover the tight ends that they're going to have problems with, that's a huge win. It doesn't really matter. The reason the Chiefs have won so many games over the past couple of years is because they've got rookies that have been able to step in and make big contributions. Carson Steele is the only rookie right now that is doing that so far on a consistent basis. Well, I guess I can't say consistent. His first 2 games didn't do much, but Xavier Worthy had a good game the first week. But who are you going to say week 2? What rookie stood out in week 2? There isn't one.
Didn't.
And that's okay, but you need to get these guys involved in the offense and on the defense, because the reality is that you're going to need them in the playoffs and late in the season, because there are going to be injuries and you're going to need other players that can step in and know what they're doing. And some of the ways that they're only going to get better is by playing.
Yeah, it certainly makes sense. We'll see what they choose to do this week. We might get a little bit of an indication when we talk to Matt Derrick coming up tomorrow. He will be having a little bit of feedback from the facility, and then they get ready for Chargers week, where we will give you our teams on Locked On, one from us and one from the enemy, as we're going to call them this week. And then we'll set you up with a preview, get you ready for all the details and the things to watch on that game on Friday. So bear with us 5 days a week. I will probably switch Carson Steele's name at least one more time, but we're going to get after it, and you're going to see a lot more of them. So thanks. Leave your topics, anything you want to hear about that maybe we haven't mentioned yet, either about this game or the coming one, in the comments below. Let us know who stood out to you that you haven't heard about yet. We appreciate your feedback. Thanks for being with us today. Click, sub, do the thing.